Now, the Australian's Greg Sheridan has called Richard Marles the worst Defence Minister this country has had in a decade. Lincoln Parker, who chairs the Liberal Party Defence and National Security Policy, joins me now. Lincoln, great to see you.
Hi,
Is he
Erin.
right, and why?
Well, I think he's right, but I think you could probably say that Richard Marles is the worst Defence Minister Australia has ever had.
Oh, wow.
And the reason I say that is primarily because he came, along with Prime Minister Albanese, to say that Australia is facing the most dire security circumstances that we've seen in 80 years.
I think he said it was keeping him up at night. He was having nightmares about it almost.
I think he did say that. And so if you're going to go out on a limb as Australia's Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Defence and say that, and then look at his record over the last couple of years of absolutely doing nothing. There's been paralysis in the defence budget. In fact, they've got an underspend in the defence budget. If you look at the preparation or so-called preparation that we need to be doing for AUKUS to prepare, to have facilities, to have training, to have upgrades.
Where's the port?
Where's the East Coast port? Nothing has happened. Nothing has happened in HMAS Sterling over on the West Coast at all. And so what's going to happen is that the United States Congress, because remember it is them that has to approve the sale of nuclear-powered submarines, not the White House, the United States Congress is going to look at Australia's track record and say, what have you done? Well, you've done nothing. You are not prepared. We're not going to sell you nuclear-powered submarines. And so, therefore, I would say he has left our country in grave danger.
If the ability to hold reviews kept us safe, we'd be safe.
Indeed. Well, that is the only thing that the government has done. They have conducted 2 reviews, but other than that, we've seen nothing. We've just seen a lot of talk and absolutely no action.
How worried should we be that what's happening in the Middle East at the moment will escalate into a bigger conflict? And off the back of that, if the US does get involved as an ally, that would mean we are too.
Well, I think we have to be worried. So we're about to see Israel go into Gaza, and that's going to be a substantial ground element war for the Israelis because Hamas has been upgunning and up-arming and preparing for an Israeli invasion of Gaza for quite some time. And so it's going to be very difficult for them to do that. And then we see that Hezbollah in the north coming out of Lebanon are likely to open a front. Then we're going to see whether Syria gets involved. Now, Iran is the linchpin behind all of this, and they are backed by China. And Iran controls all of those groups, and they may get involved increasingly. And then just today, we saw a United States destroyer intercept 3 Yemen missiles and drones going towards Israel, and luckily shot them out of the sky. And now let's not forget that Yemen is also backed by Iran. And I think as we spoke last week, Erin, who is the primary financial backer behind all of these nasty people? Well, it's China.
China and Russia having friendly talks as well is somewhat worrying. What happens now with the US distracted by what's going on in the Middle East?
Well, it's really bad because we've just seen the Pentagon say, in fact, they've created a new group within the Pentagon to scour the United States for additional ammunition and missiles and defence material that's needed for wars and conflicts, right? And so, if the United States is way down on ammunition because they've been sending it all to Ukraine and now they're sending it to Israel. Now, this is ammunition, let's not forget, particularly important for Australia, that is designed to be used in an Indo-Pacific war or conflict that could happen right on our doorstep, whether it be just, in our neighbourhood or whether it be from China invading Taiwan. So it's not looking good.
Biden was asked whether or not the US could handle supporting Israel and Ukraine. And he said, of course we can. But General Jack Casey was on the Bolt Report, I think, about a month ago and said that the US couldn't attack China or defend itself against one country, let alone, if China or Russia combine Iran. I mean, it's more and more evidence that we cannot rely on anyone else to help us, yet we're here like sitting ducks.
Well, it was your dad that said the same thing. General Molan said that Australia should be really investing in its own defence because we can't rely on others, and nor should we ever rely on others to protect our own country. Now, we're never going to be big enough to protect ourselves from China. But just back on what you said with regard to President Biden, if President Biden is so confident that the United States military can do that, why has he created a Pentagon unit that is scouring the United States for additional munitions that they can't find because they're very, very low?
Yeah. Gosh, I miss Dad right now. And I tell you what, this country misses Dad right now because he would be very useful in this moment. Talk to me about our Prime Minister not going to Israel, though he said the same thing about Ukraine and ended up there, but he is going to China.
Well, he's going to China for Gough Whitlam's 50th anniversary visit. You know, and your Labor Party loves the patron saint of all things socialism, that he got to China a couple of days before President Nixon got there. I think this sends the wrong message. I think it's weakness. It shows that he's kowtowing, he's self-censoring himself. He's not talking about all of the bad things that China does, particularly to Australia.
So you think it's too much on their terms?
Well, if it's on their terms, you know, they've had illegal tariffs on us. They, you know, kidnap Australians, Australian journalists,
in jail over there,
and they still have one over there, as we know. I mean, Cheng Lei was just released, and she was in there for 3 years in a prison where the lights were never turned off. She could barely stand up.
Rather than condemning them for that publicly, we're grateful that they released her eventually. I mean...
Yeah. I don't get it. You know, look, Labor have always been very close to the Chinese ideology, so I kind of get that. I don't think it's a good look for this Prime Minister, particularly given what happened as he's divided us over the last couple of years into being the most divided society I've ever seen in my life, and now he's going off to China whilst, you know, China is backing Iran, Hezbollah,
buying
Hamas,
all of Russia's oil,
Russia against Ukraine, and yet let's go to China.
OK, Lincoln, I wish we had more positive things to say, but we don't. One day we might, hopefully. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks,
as
Erin.
always.